What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to bring you my third episode this draft week, and that's going to be a 3 premium draft. So 3 premium or 3-mium draft, whatever you guys want to call it, this basically consists of owning 3 premium assets that are all above that 11.5 million mark. Now we're going to start off the video giving you guys why you should or shouldn't go for the 3 premium draft, some pros and cons of that situation, and then I'm going to be concluding this video with the actual draft, but showing you guys some logic in between. Before we get into the actual video, let me know in the comments down below if you guys are going for a 3 premium draft. Which 3 premiums are you guys including? Is it Kane, Haaland, Salah, Son, De Bruyne? There's so many premiums this season that I actually think look quite strong. But if you guys haven't made a 3 premium draft, I would suggest doing so just to see what you guys can actually make with these price points. But if you don't want to make one, just watch this video to see what I came up with. So with that being said, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. Now before we get into the actual draft, I want to give you guys some context about why you should or shouldn't go for a 3 premium draft and the kind of pros and cons of that situation. So on screen right now, I'm going to be posting my regression line graph that I did calculate for my value comparison that I created from the pricing mistakes video. So I do recommend that you guys go check that video out or just check the positional reviews as we go in depth into these regression lines and show you guys which players are good value or bad value or are kind of overpriced this season. But the purpose of this graph that I wanted to explain in this video is to show you guys the value comparison of your defenders, your goalkeepers, your midfielders, and finally your forwards. So let's focus on the defenders versus the midfielders because most of these premium assets kind of come out of those midfielder positions and the forward departments last season were not too great. So as you guys can see, in terms of the defenders, yes, you won't get a 10 million defender, but this is just a continuation of that regression line. So let's kind of look at that cheaper price bracket. And as you guys can see, the defenders at those cheaper price brackets get a better points per million indication than the midfielders. And as we kind of go up those lines, the distance between them two kind of increases. So what's that saying is that at kind of a maybe 5.0 million mark, your midfielder and your defender might have a similar kind of points return, but then when you go up to maybe 7.5, maybe 8 million, you see a bigger distinction. Now the thing about these midfielder options at these more expensive price points is all to do with captaincy. So for example, if you're going to be captaining Mo Salah every single game week, his value will actually double because his points are doubling, but his price is staying the same. And that's where these premium assets come into account, and that's the one thing that I want you guys to focus on. It's going to be captaincy. So why I'm saying this, and my biggest kind of debate with the 3 premium draft, is that if you guys aren't going to captain one of those premium assets frequently, I don't think it's worth actually going for them. In my own team, for example, in the opening couple game weeks, I'm going to be rotating between Haaland / De Bruyne or going with Salah. I think Man City and Liverpool kind of alternate good fixtures quite well, but then there are some managers that are actually going for Son or Kane to start off with because they do think their fixtures outweigh the other two. So that's fine in my opinion because you're considering the captaincy debate there, but if you're not going to captain Son or Kane in the opening couple game weeks, I don't believe they're worth having. So to kind of expand my debate on this, I want to show you guys some comparisons between 2 ownership players. So let's for example take Son, who's currently 12.0 million in that midfield department, and let's take a 4.5 midfielder, and I'm going to be going for the highest scoring one last season, which is actually going to be Murphy from Newcastle. So in this debate, I'm actually being quite favorable to 4.5s because I am selecting an asset that actually got a reasonable amount of points for his price point, but this season, who kind of knows, there might be a 4.5 like Pereira who gets more, or there might be an option that gets less than Murphy last season. So in terms of the points total, we had a 258 for Heung-min Son, a massive season for the South Korean, scored one of the highest points returns ever in FPL, and then we had Jacob Murphy who got 62. So totaling those 2 points, we end up with 320 total points, and now let's see if we actually split those funds respectively. So let's for example say we took Son's 12 million and Murphy's 4.5, we combined them to 16.5, and then we actually selected that or divided that into 2 8.0 million options. So I'm going to be going for Saka and I'm going to be going for Mount because I think kind of respectively these 2 players have found their way into most people's drafts, at least in the early stages of the season, and that's because these 2 assets scored quite well last season. Saka scored 179 and Mount scored 169 points, and that's going to total 348, but we also have 0.5 left in the bank. So as you guys can see, if you did not captain Heung-min Son last season and you could only afford a 4.5 in your starting 11 to accompany him, you actually would have been better off going with Saka and Mason Mount. Now obviously this is taking last season's points totals, which might not be fair, but you also are assuming that Heung-min Son replicates the form of last season where it almost was a record breaker for him. So in this scenario of going for 2 midfielder options, you're better off going with 2 8.0s, but this situation might not be as realistic as the next one. So let's take away those accompanying players. Let's go for a more realistic option here. This is what I've seen most people actually go for. It's going with Heung-min Son and then a cheaper defender. So the defender I've selected is going to be Tyrone Mings because he was basically the 4th highest scorer in that 4.5 defender bracket last season at a really respectable 118. Now yes, there were better options than him, but they were kind of around that 120 mark, so not too much discrepancy between those 4.5s, so let's just stick with Tyrone Mings for now. So totaling those points, you can see that that was a better value for money. You now have 376, and this situation is more realistic for our FPL drafts this season. But now let's stick with Saka, and let's actually go for Trent Alexander-Arnold, who is going to give you 1 million left in the bank. So Trent last season scored 208 points, which is a massive score and the highest scoring defender, and I'm pretty sure this season he's going to replicate that form. So now what you end up with is actually a slightly increased total points at 387, which is not too much higher than the other combination, but just remember that you have an extra 1 million in your bank. So as you guys can see, you have to take captaincy into consideration, and I just wanted to stress this because I've seen some freemium drafts that haven't been that great, and I think that most people are getting confused with captaincy. So what you guys can do is, no, I'm not saying don't go for a 3 premium draft, but please bring up a selection of your captaincy. If you guys do share in the Discord, I can give you some insight on it. But right now, what I'm thinking that you're better off doing is rotating your premium assets, maybe going for a Haaland or a Kane to start, then switching them out, depending on captaincy, then going for them from the start and sacrificing in your other departments. But let me know what you guys think about this debate. Do you think I'm wrong with my math? Hopefully my math is pretty accurate on this one. I did use a calculator, but if you guys don't agree with my points, let me know in the comments down below and we can have a debate. But now heading on to the actual draft here, and as you guys can see, I've gone for a 5-3-2 formation, as I just think the defensive department, as we've seen in the regression line, that position just holds better value for money. So I think if you guys are going to be going for a 3-premium draft, you have to go with those defensive options because they just make your team look better. So starting off with the bench, because I've gone for 5 defenders at the back, I've actually increased my value of my bench, going for 3 4.5s. Now the goalkeeper at 4.0 million is a no-brainer there. In terms of the goalkeeper options, you want to go for a cheapie, but because we don't have other 4.0s in midfield and forward positions, I have to go for some 4.5s there. Now Andreas Pereira and Longstaff are my 2 selections of choice just because out of the 4.5s they have a great chance of starting, and Longstaff was actually starting for Newcastle towards the latter stages of last season. Andreas Pereira got an assist for Mitrovic in their game against Benfica, so he looks nailed on to start for Fulham, and that really attracts me at 4.5. Now the last option, Greenwood, is just the most popular 4.5 forward to go for. I've just selected him here, but you guys can go for simply anyone because I don't think any of them are actually going to start. But now going on to the starting 11, as you guys have been waiting for, and to switch things up, I'm actually going to be going over my selected premium assets of choice to start off with. So the first option, you can't mention premium asset without Mo Salah at 13.0 million. I think he's worth it at that price point because you are going to captain him quite a few times in the opening couple game weeks. So the Egyptian is going to be slot straight into my 3-premium draft. Even though he is quite expensive, I think he's worth it. Now my next premium of choice might be a little bit of a controversial one, but I'm going to be going for Heung-min Son over Harry Kane, even though he does come in 0.5 more expensive. So the South Korean is my kind of choice of Spurs attacker to go for, but if you guys do go for Harry Kane, as I mentioned, 0.5 cheaper, so your draft actually might look slightly better than mine. And then finally up front, I've decided to not go for Harry Kane. I've gone for Erling Haaland up front because I want kind of a split from Spurs, Liverpool and Man City, and I think Haaland's going to have a great season. Now what you guys could do is rotate here. You could go for De Bruyne and then go for Kane up front. Whatever you guys want to kind of go for, I just feel more excited by going with Haaland and Son, and I think it's a little bit more different than the generic template. So now we got our premium assets, and unfortunately it's going to take a lot of the majority of our bank budget, but don't worry, we can still fit in some more premium selections, and that's what I'm going over right now. So the premium assets continue into our defensive department, and our goalkeeper of choice is going to be Ederson. And I know what you're kind of thinking, why have I gone for Ederson? Well, I still want some Man City coverage from a defensive point of view, and Ederson comes in cheaper than those other assets like Laporte and Cancelo. So great value for money. I think FPL have given us the decision to make with dropping the keeper's price, and that's why I've selected him at 5.5. Now moving on to the rest of the defense, I've gone for another premium defender. It's going to be Trent, the most expensive defender actually in the game. But for me, he was a prerequisite. I had to have a Liverpool defender, and it had to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. So it is actually nice to see that although you're going for 3 premium assets, you still are getting some value in those premium defenders. Another more premium defender to go for is actually going to be Reece James at 6.0 million. So I think at his price point, great value for money. If Chelsea do play a back 5 as expected, great attacking stats, defensive stats, he's got the whole works, the whole package at 6.0 million. But now this is where we kind of get more budget in our defensive department, and upcoming are 3 4.5s, but I still think their points returns are going to be quite good this season. So the first option is going to be Sanchez from Spurs. I just think at his price point, Spurs defense should be quite rock solid under Conte, and although this is not going to be a Doherty, or maybe a Perisic, I still think that Sanchez has some attacking threat off those set pieces. Coming up next is going to be a popular 4.5 Tomiyasu. Now the only thing that you guys have to watch out for is what formation Arsenal do choose. Zinchenko coming into the line, are they going to go for a back 5? Is Tomiyasu more of a centre back, more of a right wing back? Who kind of knows? But I'm keeping my eye on this one. But I will say, if the Japanese international does play at 4.5, he's a great asset. And then our final selection at 4.5 is going to be Aït-Nouri. Now this is a little bit of a question mark, but I've selected him because he's more of an exciting pick, and I really do like Wolves' upcoming fixtures, at least at the start of this season. And if Aït-Nouri does start, he offers some great attacking threat going forward from fullback. But just make sure that he is going to play, because I think that that's the main consideration here. If he is going to be rotated in preseason, he probably will be rotated in game week 1, game week 2, and so on and so forth. So now going on to the midfield department, we're going to complete our midfield with another cheap option from Wolves. At 5.5 million, it's going to be Pedro Neto, and at his price point, I don't think you can get better value than him. Now yes, Wolves aren't that great, and Pedro Neto has struggled with injuries, but at that price point, I think there's not too much risk there, and that's why I've gone for the Wolves selection. And now in our final department, you might be questioning if we can afford Gabriel Jesus, but yes, we actually can. In the forward line, the second highest owned option in the current game. If you guys did watch my template draft video, I think the Brazilian is on for a stellar season. Now with Arteta, I'm just hoping that he plays him at his natural centre forward position, but he should, and I think that Arsenal's opening couple games are going to be a real nice test for Gabriel Jesus. But concluding this kind of draft, as you guys can see on screen here, the draft does not look as bad as you probably initially expected. I thought this draft would definitely look not as great as it currently does, but with those cheap 4.5 defenders, you can get a relatively respectable team. But let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Would you have gone for a different approach? Would you have gone for a cheaper goalkeeper, upgraded maybe a Sanchez and Aït-Nouri, that sort of thing? Or maybe your changes come in the 3 premiums. Would you have gone for Harry Kane, Kevin De Bruyne? What's your 3 favorite premiums to actually look at? But this is basically wrap up the video, guys. Hope you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like if you did and subscribe if you're not subscribed yet. I'll be seeing you guys for 2 more drafts, including my own on Friday. So make sure that you have those bell notifications on, and also you subscribe to the channel. But I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.